Hello everyone. My long hiatus is finally over.
Guess who's back? 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 Guess who's back?
I had to take a bit of a break from posting videos for a while for a bunch of different reasons. One of which was remodeling my garage into something that more closely resembles a studio. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk to you today about science, a fascinating topic, and the scientific method, which is an excellent way to make science seem really dry and tedious. But you need the scientific method. Without it, you wouldn't really have science. You'd just have a bunch of assholes throwing things together and hoping for the best.
Stupid science bitches. Hey, you're right, stupid science bitch!
Since the days of ancient Egypt and through Aristotle, Ibn Sina, Galileo, Newton, and all the way into the modern age, scientists have recognized the value of a systematic approach to scientific inquiry. Starting with a question and then researching, hypothesizing, experimenting, analyzing, and documenting, it's a long process, and rightfully so. I mean, no one ever said science is easy. Except comic book writers, apparently. Seriously, think about it. Think about all of the superheroes and supervillains who owe their powers and careers to scientific mishaps which were really just caused by the totally asinine misapplication of science. And since by now you probably know that I love science and that I love comic books, so let me take you on a brief journey through the scientific method as it applies to the real world, the world of superheroes, and the world of supervillains. So what exactly is the scientific method? Well, I mentioned the steps briefly a few seconds ago, but I'll run through it again really quick. The first step is to start with a question that needs to be answered. That's pretty self-explanatory. The second step is to do some background research to find out what is known, what still needs to be explained, and get some insight into how the question can be answered. The third step is to formulate a hypothesis, basically just an educated guess into what the answer will be. Okay, now here's where I need to air a pet peeve of mine. Too many people use the words hypothesis and theory interchangeably, or they just don't use the word hypothesis at all and they always say things like, I have a theory.
To be honest, Captain, it's only a theory.
Theory.
Give me a theory, Doctor.
Theory.
Want me to test my theory out on your head?
Theory.
I can confirm your theory to be horse shit.
Theory.
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 No, you don't, because they're not the same. I mean, if you want to get really technical, you could argue that the meanings of both words have changed over time from their original Greek roots. But in modern parlance, a hypothesis is an educated guess about an answer to a question, while a theory is a well-tested, widely accepted, but impossible to 100% prove answer to a question. For example, we all accept that gravity exists and works the way that physicists tell us it does, but it can't be proven as such because it's a force that permeates the entire universe, and we cannot leave the universe to conduct control experiments from the outside. But otherwise, there is no compelling reason to doubt its existence, because all of the evidence that scientific minds can acquire all points to the same conclusion.
Get off your soapbox, will you? You only sound foolish.
Okay, back on topic. Once you got your hypothesis, you test it by performing experiments. Now this is what most people think of when they think science, but it's actually only one step of the process. Once the experiments have concluded, the scientist analyzes the data and the results, and finally documents and reports their conclusions. So that all sounds pretty reasonable, right? Well, here's where the fun starts. Because even though most of these superheroes are considered to be the greatest scientific minds of their respective ages, worlds, dimensions, universes, whatever, the fact of the matter is they are all either piss poor scientists, or they use a scientific method that is radically different from the one we use in the real world. So here is the scientific method as applied to superheroes. The first 3 steps are basically the same. You ask a question, do some background research, and form a hypothesis. Or at least I would assume they're the same, because they never actually show them or discuss them in comic books, but that's fine. There's not a whole lot of inherent drama there. They usually skip straight to the 4th step. Now if you remember, that should be test the hypothesis by performing experiments, but nascent superheroes take this a step further by exclusively performing experiments alone and invariably during a storm or some other unsafe condition. The 5th step is to basically sit back and wait for an accident to happen, one which should be fatal, but in this case will instead result in superpowers. This leads up to the final step in the superhero scientific method, which is to suddenly remember a traumatic memory from their past that prompts the now superpowered scientists to use their powers to fight crime. You see that difference? It's pretty significant. So now let's continue the fun and examine the scientific method according to supervillains. So again, the first 3 steps are probably the same. Blah 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 question, blah 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 research, blah 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 hypothesis.
Boring!
Now your budding supervillain will typically tackle that 4th step by sneaking into the lab after hours and without permission so that they can deliberately bypass established safety and ethics protocols and perform their extremely sensitive experiments on themselves.
Dr. Osborn, please. The performance enhancers aren't ready. The data just doesn't justify this test.
Risks are part of laboratory science. Sometimes you gotta do things yourself. Back to Formula.
Seriously, this happens all the time in comic books, and these experiments invariably result in superpowers of some kind. But it stands to reason, because you need superpowered supervillains. Otherwise, you just have superheroes wailing on people with radiation sickness or cancer.
Take that, cancer! And that!
Anyway, once superpowers have been acquired, usually at the expense of whatever sanity they had remaining, the newly minted supervillain immediately adopts a name and costume relevant to their powers, and somehow builds a lair and hires henchmen that all conform to the same theme. Honestly, are there one-ads out there that cater specifically to supervillains? Has there ever been a spin-off of House Hunters where the buyer is looking for something in a volcano or an abandoned asylum? I actually wish there was. I'd watch it. And the final step in the supervillain scientific method is to embark on a crime spree, often to steal some rare but completely useless artifact that fits the theme of their new identity, and just happens to be on display at the museum in the city where they operate. Seriously, how does someplace like, say, the Gotham City Museum stay open when literally every artifact they have ever displayed has been coveted by one of Gotham's thousands of themed supervillains?
Get your cable set, rig your hoist, and bring that mammoth to the hole!
This whimsical scene, once part of a waxwork museum, will be
Frankly, I'm curious about the turnover rate for Gotham City curators. Or security guards, because that's gotta be a stressful job. So if you want to be a good scientist, stick to the real scientific method. But let's face it, if you're watching this channel, you're probably more interested in becoming a superhero or a supervillain anyway. So you're welcome in advance for this step-by-step guide in how to abuse science to achieve your goals. And if you're not too busy fighting crime or planning world domination, you can always give us a click of the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Many thanks. We'll see you next time.